So a group of friends and I are putting together a bingo tournament. So I wanted to make this video to break down how to play bingo, all the squares that there are, and what I consider to be the fastest way to complete said squares. This video will be not only for the tournament for people who want to participate, but it will also be for anyone who just wants to play with their friend and have a lot more information going into this. Cyberpunk Bingo is honestly one of my favorite ways to play this game. It's honestly a ton of fun and I highly recommend everyone give it a try. Now, some of these squares do include DLC content, so you will be required to have the DLC in order to play bingo the way we do. One quick side note, this video is going to be basically a glorified list, but it will hold a lot of really niche, weird knowledge that if you just want to know about Cyberpunk, you can know from this video. Like if you've ever wanted to know where to get the secret monster truck. Now, if you're looking to play bingo, we have a document linked down in the description. All you need to do is select the entire document, copy all this code, and then go to a website called BingoSync. In Bingo, you name the chat room, give it a password, and then scroll all the way down in the game category to custom. Here, you input the code, change it to lockout, I would highly recommend this, and I would change the variant to randomized. Either playing by yourself or including some friends, make sure to choose your color, and then once you get going, click to reveal, and here will be your bingo squares. But now let's go over how to set up your game. Starting up a new game with the DLC active, we want to start at Phantom Liberty. Always play on very hard. I mean, you can make a choice depending on what team you're playing with. We always start Street Kid. From here, choose your appearance. After the game is done loading, you have press space to continue. This is usually when we reveal the board and press space to continue. Now let's jump into all the squares and explain how to complete all of them. This might take a minute. Now, one of the first squares to always keep your eyes open for is to let President Myers die. This square is by far the fastest square and gives you access to Dogtown, which can give you access to a lot more squares as well. So it's a very good square to go for. The fastest possible way to do it is to immediately head to the Dogtown entrance. And after Songbird is done yapping, you just run away from Dogtown and, well, she dies. Now, most of the time you want to wait for the quest pop-up before clicking the square. That is the best way to decide who actually got there on time. Now let's jump into what I consider to be some of the more simple squares, such as complete suspected organized crimes. Some are way harder than others, and it might just take some trial and error of you playing the game to figure that out. In order to complete these squares, we kill all enemies in these encounters. One square that goes along with completed suspected organized crimes is to complete assault in progresses. My favorite route, if you're curious, is to start at this assault in progress and kind of just run through the city collecting all of these. You can get quite a few done very quickly. This is also really good for money making and gaining XP for the coming squares. Next, we have the Cyber Psychos. We put in a bunch of squares killing Cyber Psychos in specific ways with specific weapons, such as Slotomatic, Skippy in Puppy Loving Pacifist, bunch of different iconics, and the weird one, the Ashra without a smart link. These are all fairly straightforward and pretty fun to do. Now, the one weird and kind of tricky thing about these squares is that we do have to get Regina to call us first. My favorite Cyber Psychos to go for are all the ones in Watson. Quick pro tip, this suspected organized crime always has a crafting spec for an Ashra sniper on the big boss upstairs. So if you need one, that's a guaranteed spot. They're pretty rare at this low level, so you might need to do it. Now in total, there are 7 fixers in the game, and we decided to do 2 gigs from each of the fixers as a square. Certain fixers will just be faster than others because the quests are just easier. If you're curious, my recommendation for Regina are these 2 gigs here. Wakako only has 2 gigs, so you just gotta complete them. El Capitan, I like to complete these 2. Padre, these 2 gigs are really close together and also extremely simple to complete. Hands is the tricky one. You gotta make your way into Dogtown to gain access to the other gigs. The one I would recommend completing is the one at the church, and then the one outside that you already have access to. Dino is a little tricky because after completing the only gig he has available, another gig will then finally pop up and you're allowed to finally complete 2 squares for him. He's one of the ones that can take a little bit longer, so I'd be a little cautious about doing his right away. Dakota only has 2 gigs available. This one is one of the fastest because you can just hack through a camera and destroy the thing you need to destroy, but then you have to drive all the way out to the end of the Badlands, which can take a while. So her 2 gigs can be a little bit of a time sink. Now, every gig does have a fastest way to complete it. Majority of the time, you just need to make it to a computer or person and interact with them. You can complete most gigs with 1 to 2 interactions. The fun thing about gigs is there's usually a lot of square overlap involving them. This specific gig for Padre will give you access to the Quadra Turbo. After completing the gig and then waiting a day, you will get the text message from Jake giving you access to this car, which is one of the squares we want to complete. I actually really like doing this square early because it gives you access to a decent car, which lets you get around the open world a lot faster, just in general. So things like that are things to keep in mind. Another way that we've incorporated some gigs is to eliminate every enemy in the encounter. We chose specific ones that have a decent amount of enemies just to make it a little tricky. The first gig, Error 404, is located in Santo Domingo for El Cap. The second gig, On a Tight Leash, is with Padre in Haywood. And finally, Monster Hunt for Regina. Again, because you can combo these gigs with the Get 2 gigs for Fixers, it's really nice to complete them. But they are a bit of a time sink because you have to kill all enemies in the encounter. Now, we have 2 squares that require you to complete certain gigs without being detected. First is Tiger and Vulture. There's a couple ways to complete this gig. You could either gruelingly get through it like normal, or go in the back way if you have high enough tech. The tech would make it a lot easier, but also means you need to invest your attributes, which you may not want to do. And the second gig we included to complete without being detected is Rite of Passage. These squares were just ways for us to include different types of gameplay, but also make you go to gigs you might not complete normally. Now that we're done talking gigs, let's jump into jobs. We'll go into the ones that are immediately on your map and eventually go into the ones that are hidden. This side job here is to help the Flaming Crotchman. Literally, just complete the quest. Next, we have this square to obtain the iconic scalpel. The way you do that is by completing the quest given to you by the guy in the afterlife here. In order to get the quest, just go into the afterlife, wait for Rogue and Pan Am to stop yapping, and he'll give you the quest, and you'll obtain scalpel. Next, we have complete 2 Beat on the Brat fights. In order to get these quests to show up, just literally run past Coach Fred and you'll get the quests. Now, the 2 I would recommend doing is the Twins in Watson and the Fight in Arroyo. The Fight in Arroyo can also give you an iconic, which can tie into other squares. Next square, complete 6th Street shooting competition. Pretty straightforward. Collect the painting from space is just this icon here. Just do what it says. Take a meditation class, just head to the park in downtown and take the meditation class. Obtaining David's jacket after viewing the BD on this quest icon here. There's a lot of texting back and forth with El Cap, but eventually you'll get David's jacket. Side job in Dogtown is to complete the fist fight as Hanson in the Balls to the Walls quest, and then out on the pier is to fix and ride the roller coaster. Now, let's talk about some of the quests that are a little bit more hidden until you do either the right things or have things like Dogtown unlocked. For example, stealing a car for El Cap will require you to get into Dogtown and just hope that you get this icon to show up so you can do the quest. Upon stealing the car and taking it to where El Cap needs you and completing the conversation with him, you will complete said square. Next, we have Adopt Nibbles the cat. Heading to the Kabuki market is probably the fastest way to get cat food, and after heading back to your starting apartment, you grab this shard here and place the cat food in the bowl. Wait or sleep a day, and now you have cat. Did I just say where you... Yeah, okay, I did. Whatever, we're leaving that. One of the more hidden quests for a square is to complete the quest Bullets at Jinguji. After your first time visiting Jinguji and talking with the guy behind the counter, you have to get far enough away from him, wait a day. After opening the shop inventory, you'll have a Cyber Psycho show up. Just kill the Cyber Psycho and finish the quest, getting the quest pop-up completed. Another sort of hidden quest that we included was to move the dumpster in front of Brendan. After moving over to where Brendan is, letting this guy say some of his dialogue, you then want to run away far enough to kind of deload the area. And after waiting a day, Brendan should be nice and chatty, and you should be able to move the dumpster after having a nice chat with him. Another super niche hidden quest is at the end of this pier here. There's this girl standing here crying named Angie, and if you just jump in the water, you'll see a quest icon pop up. There's a key in the water. Grabbing the key, returning it to Angie gives you the quest completion. This isn't like an official quest, so you're not going to get a full-blown pop-up for it, but it's just something we included because it takes time to do it. A fun one that I included was to get Takemura to impersonate Hideshi Hino. After making it to Jig Jig with Takemura, make sure not to get too close to Wakako's place. You know you did it right because this guy right next to Wakako's place will start talking to Takemura. And after going through the dialogue, you can get Takemura to impersonate Hideshi Hino.
Better buckle up!
Getting Takemura to say better buckle up completes the square. Now, the remaining squares just involve either collecting things or just super miscellaneous things that we wanted to add to these challenges. One of the easiest and most obvious ones has to do with leveling up specific attributes. Basically, without resetting, just invest 5 of the new attributes that you'll attain through leveling up into one of the skill trees required for the square. You start with one attribute and we do count that. So you only need to reach level 19 to invest into your first skill tree to get the square. Before I get into the last kind of random feeling squares, we're going to go through the squares that are about collecting items. A lot of these squares can be completed while you're doing others, so they're very good to just keep in the back of your brain, but also require a ton of niche knowledge. The one that's brand new that we just added because of the new update is to get the unique car colors. When scanning specific cars, if you go over to the True Tone, you can see this car has a specific paint job that says unique. So they only cost $250 a piece, so we added collect 5 unique car paint jobs. This can be done just while driving around and while doing other quests. So this may either go really quick for you if you get lucky and pass a lot of unique cars, or it might take a while. Going to parking lots full of rare high-end cars like this can help you get the unique paint jobs very quickly. Now the other collectibles I don't really think I need to show much is to collect 4 relic points, collect 3 Xmod iconics. For the Xmods, I'd highly recommend just going into Dogtown near the pyramid. There's a ton right in this area. Collect 10 iconic weapons. Collecting the Xmods in Dogtown also helps with this square, but getting 10 iconics can be done throughout the entire run, such as getting Scalpel. There's a lot of quests that give you iconics. Scan 8 tarot cards. These are literally on your map. Own 7 vehicles. Because you start with 3 vehicles starting in the DLC, we only need to either collect or purchase 4 more cars. And we have squares that also help you get cars, so it kind of works well. Collect 5 perk shards. This is one of those ones that's really unique. I would highly recommend looking up a video for all the locations. Cyberpunk in total, I believe, has about 11 perk shards. I could be wrong on that number. They're just scattered throughout, so completing them while you're doing other stuff makes sense. Loot 2 Dogtown airdrops. You gotta get really lucky with this one. This one is very RNG based. I kind of don't like that it's so RNG based, but just making sure you're running through Dogtown every so often to try and trigger an airdrop if you need the square. Collect 2 different permanent buffs from Dogtown. These are purchased from pretty much any vendor in Dogtown, but they do cost a heavy chunk of change, so just be cautious of your money here. Next, we have collecting the 2 purchasable iconic throwing knives, Blue Fang and Headhunter. These can be purchased from the melee vendor in Pacifica and the one way out in the Badlands near where you get Anders. Both of these costs in the teens of thousands, and I think it changes depending on your level, so getting these earlier will help you save some money. They're expensive though, so this is a big money sink. And the final square of collecting things is to collect a full set of legendary armor. This stuff used to be really important in old patches, but now it's basically useless, but it all still exists. All around Night City, there are specific pieces of legendary armor just scattered throughout, and this is one of those ones where you might have to look up a list to figure out where all the locations are. This will definitely be a tricky one to fill all of these slots with legendary items just because of all the niche knowledge you need to have. One square that combos well with collecting vehicles is to purchase the Quadra Turbo R740, and it costs a nice cool 69,000. Speaking of spending a ton of money, one of the more expensive squares on this entire board is to purchase the apartment at the Glen. Hovering over it, you can see it costs 80,000, and you can purchase it from a computer at your apartment. Getting the 80K required to purchase this apartment can take quite a bit of time. Make sure you're selling your guns because guns are worth quite a bit of money. Of course, a couple of the squares we couldn't not include was to get to specific milestones within the arcade games. 2 of the arcades, Road Trace and Trauma Drama, are just located in Pacifica, and the final one, Arasaka Tower 3D, is located out in the Badlands in this specific hut. This is the only location for this one, so you gotta know it. Quick side note, while you're in Pacifica, there's lots of vending machines here, so one of our squares, purchasing 100 burritos, can usually be completed by just running through Pacifica's market. Considering you spawn here, it's a pretty quick square to go for if you want to go for it. Now, back to Arasaka Tower 3D, this is how we access the secret to unlock the secret monster truck. This might be one of the most confusing, weird squares out there, but to try and simplify it the most for you guys, basically waiting till about 3 a.m., you want to wait till the clock ticks right over to 4 a.m. Using phone calls to help you skip time is something that I use quite often. Once the clock in the top right ticks to 4 a.m., we want to access this computer, go through all the files. I actually don't know if you need to go through all the files. And then the clock is on and we need to make it to a mattress in the Badlands. This mattress is located near where you go save Saul and the train station that you do with the Aldecaldos. After finding this mattress, you just have to stand on it until your character falls asleep. I like to try and use this cactus and smokestack as a guidance to help me find this mattress. I also know it's in between these 2 billboards. This one is a massive time sink, but does give you a vehicle which can also combo into owning 7 vehicles. Next, we have kill 5 enemies with the Type 66 Hoon. Just grab the Hoon and kill 5 enemies. You could do it at an assault in progress or if you just know of a spawn location for enemies. Pretty simple and gives you a good car. Combos well with the collecting cars square. Now, a really weird one is taking Ozob's van to where you fight him. When you're doing all the beat on the brat fights, basically Ozob will say, hey, I want to fight you too. And he fights you in a pool out in Pacifica here. When he's there, his van looks exactly like this, so we decided to use this van as a square, taking this specific van all the way to Pacifica. No fast traveling, none of that, because you can't own this vehicle. Now, there are other vehicles that look exactly like this out in Pacifica that some of the Voodoo Boys drive, but we specifically want this one located near these two merchants in Japantown. Taking the van to this location near the GIM and driving it into the pool completes the square. Next, we have killed 2 cyber junkies in Dogtown. There's a bunch of them in Dogtown, but there's really only 3 available off rip. One near this little ball that I'm standing next to, there's one down an alleyway, and then there's one way up here. I usually do the one in the alleyway and this ball. You can identify them because they're usually by themselves, a skull over their head, and they have a ton of cyberware on them. They usually dash around and are actually kind of difficult, definitely having a lot more health than your average enemy. These aren't quite as difficult as a cyber psycho, but they're pretty close. So the square is to kill 2 of them in Dogtown. And finally, we've made it. Destroy 16 lawn flamingos. There's 3 groupings of flamingos. One is by this pool in the background of this cul-de-sac here. And then heading down the road immediately across from the cul-de-sac, you'll be able to find another grouping of flamingos here. And then behind these shrubs and over by this tree, you'll find a couple more. After destroying all 16 lawn flamingos, that completes the square. And there you have it. That's how you play Cyberpunk Bingo. I didn't really know if anyone would watch this video except for the people competing or playing bingo, but if you watch to the end and were interested in sort of just this explanation, I'd be curious to know. I cannot recommend playing Cyberpunk Bingo enough. It's a lot of fun if you get some friends to play with you, really competitive, and it just turns Cyberpunk into a little bit more of an arcade race sort of experience rather than this very heavy narrative story-driven experience, which can be a good shakeup. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed not only this video, but the future bingo videos to come. Peace, love, and eat your sandwiches.